we came up with something which we called the greener standard promise. And that was because we knew we could do it, we would do the same style of product, greener than your traditional choice. So we just changed it. So people would come to us and go, right, we want to take over this space, we want to do that thing. By the time they got their quote, it'd be, okay, here's your quote, the same price as it would have been for what you've asked for, but this is the sustainable version of it. And you can ask me to change it back to the traditional, but that just makes you a bad human being. Fundamentally, you're just asking for something to be worse with no benefit. So what do you want to do? And they would inadvertently move along. So I think from a sustainability perspective, where we were looking at that, yes, we were going greener pre-COVID, but coming out of it, it was like everyone went, well, nothing's the same. So we can just start again. Whereas before, I think lots of people were really reluctant to change. I think we've all grown up increasingly aware of the damage that is happening to the planet and the fact that we can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend like we're not part of that.
John, thank you very much for joining me today. You are the founder of Wild VC. Can you tell us a little bit about what it is that you've done and what it is that you currently do?
Yes, so thanks for having me. As I say, founded Wild VC, which is a brand activation agency. We're specialised in bringing brands to life and telling their stories, with a particular focus on trying to do that as ethically positive as possible. So that goes from everything from having helped with parades for massive football clubs through to minor brand window moments. We're doing something doll's house size next week. I'm working with all sorts of scales of fame of company as well. And yeah, we've sort of done that journey. Began in 2016 as little old me, and now have our studio team, our operations team spread out literally across the world now, looking for the best solutions we can. We've been B Corp-certified for 4 years, just been recertified. And we're one of the first companies of our type to do that, which is great. It's just sort of waiting to see what we do next.
Can you share a little bit about your journey into sustainability then? What was it that made you want to get involved in it?
I think there was, on a personal level, there was just a natural curiosity of those, particularly of a certain set of generations now. I think we've all grown up increasingly aware of the planet, the damage that is happening to the planet, and the fact that we can't just bury our heads in the sand and pretend like we're not part of that. So I would say it was sort of twofold. Our sustainability journey began because I personally wanted us to look at how we could be better. And we've always tried to be a good company, be that green or socially worrying about what's going on and everything else. Equally, we had a bit of a push. So our biggest client back when we were starting out was British Fashion Council. We used to do London Fashion Weeks, and they wanted to be the first London Fashion Week that could say they were actually sustainable. And particularly with the fashion industry having such a bad rep for sustainability, they wanted to really highlight how events like that promote smaller designers and smaller houses that actually aren't fast fashion. The challenge that came to us was that something meant, how do you fully brand an event that traditionally has been done with a lot of plastic and have to certify that it's not, with actually what wasn't a lot of lead time going into that decision. And if you're not, and it was very much if you're not, well, you can't work with us anymore, soz guys. But it was the push we needed. It meant that we could stop just playing with stuff and seeing what we were going to do and go, actually, we have a reason why we have to do this now. And yeah, we sort of delved into the way it worked. Everyone at the time, this was back in 2017, 2018, everyone at the time used to impose a green tax in our industry. We found it was, oh yeah, we can do that in a greener way, but it's going to cost you more money. And I think to a degree, there are still some places that try that now, but luckily that's changed a bit. But for us, we found we just had to dig into it more. We went literally to grassroots. What materials actually exist that can be used to brand? Let's go to speak to the factories that are making those on the ground, work out actually how much better are they, and then bring those into our broader supply chain and go, okay, if you were using this without telling them that it's green, what will the cost be? How will this work? Can you do it? Oh, it's basically what you've got now. Okay, great. So turns out I can do this all at the right price point. Thanks very much. And we've sort of worked through from there. Always been relatively happy to share that information with suppliers. And I think open, honest transparency has been the key as we've then gone along. I would be lying to say that we are perfect in how green we are, because in my honest opinion, no one is. But even if you were close, well, I don't know. I don't think anyone is even close. I think in our industry in particular, you don't need to brand something. That's not a fundamental thing that needs to exist for the survival of mankind. So anything we do is worse than the planet needs it to be and worse than a human being needs it to be. So our job is just to try and make it as less damaging as possible, and then how do we counteract, hopefully, the minimal damage that we have done.
So starting back in 2016, I'm interested, how did you find getting through the COVID years and get out of that in an event space?
So us as a brand, so luckily we dealt with a lot of range of clients. We diversified a little bit. We very much bucked the trends. So we'd gone into that completely, like a lot of people, completely debt free. We were actually building up our client base, working with some well-known brands. I mean, that obviously happened in March. That Christmas, we'd just done our first international campaign for All Saints and things like that. We just brought on board a very, very reputable member of the retail industry to be leading up our creative side. And we just doubled down, basically. We had a plan to hire staff, and we kept to that plan, paid everyone their wage, and kept on going. And there were times when it looked like that was a terrible, terrible decision, but we came out of it 3 times the size, both turnover and staffing wise. In fact, staffing wise, we were about 5 times the size by the time COVID had sort of ended by the end of the 3rd lockdown, and then tried to push on from there. I'd be lying if I didn't say there have been some things that have rippled since, that particularly financially, that has made it harder. But I think anyone who's running a business will have felt that same pain. So it doesn't feel quite as bad because you're all in it together. And I think it's helped everyone have a reset mentally. So I think from a sustainability perspective, where we were looking at that, yes, we were going greener pre-COVID, but coming out of it, it was like everyone went, well, nothing's the same. So we can just start again. Whereas before, I think lots of people were really reluctant to change. We had clients in the past who would say to us, oh yeah, I really want to use that product, but it's just not as good a quality. And you'd be like, but it is. Actually, in some cases, it's better. And then you would get them to trial it and everything else. And they'd be like, oh, it's just too much of a risk to the business model because of the quality. And you'd be like, but it's not, because we've proven the point that it works. Whereas post-COVID, you felt like everyone went, well, you know what, let's just give it a go. Like, we've just got through that, so let's try this too.
I'm curious, what are some of the biggest challenges you've faced growing Wild?
Money. I think it's the same for everyone, right? But especially when you're a small business, you sit there and you go, right, I'm going to do this. As the founder of it, I wear a lot of hats. I wear a lot less than I used to, but I still wear a lot of hats. Back then it was, okay, we're really neck deep in this project. This is going really well. I forgot to do any sales for the last 3 months because I've been too busy working on this. So that was great, but I don't have a pipeline anymore. For a long time, we're in a bit of a vicious cycle of that. Also, just trying to get our message heard. For a very long time, we were really good at telling the world that they should be proud of who they were and that you shouldn't, like, our logo used to be a boar. We still have it as a little icon occasionally that appears. And there was a story behind it that meant that it was meant to be this like animal that was way more aggressive than it should be because it was just really proud of who it was. And it would be deep down inside everyone. Everyone would have this inner boar, but most people wouldn't follow it. They would go, no, you know what? Louis Vuitton's just done this, so that's what we should do. Rather than going, Louis Vuitton's just done that. Isn't that great? But I'm going to do this. And our purpose as an organization is meant to be helping those who either don't know how to let that out or who just don't know how to. Some of them go, right, I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. All right, we love working with a startup. We just worked with a startup. They did Dragon's Den and everything. We worked with a brand called Just Wears, fantastic underwear brand that's got a really good message about comfort, everything else. They haven't had a physical retail presence before. They launched in Selfridges. Going on that journey with them has been just as fulfilling, if not more so, than going on the same journey with All Saints, who have done a window campaign before. They know what they're doing. We're just doing it slightly differently. Big shout out to them because they became the top selling underwear brand at Selfridges within 3 weeks. Credit
Wow,
to.
well done.
But back to what you were asking, challenges, money, getting our voices heard, and equally say, just believing in ourselves. Sometimes you hit those moments you're like, I know the plan and I know technically we're following the plan, but I don't know if the plan's right anymore. And actually, the only time it's gone wrong is when we've panicked and stopped. Whenever we've doubled down and gone, this is why I'm doing it, it's worked.
It's funny when it comes down to, like, you build a strategy and you build the plan, and There's that point where you're working the plan, you know it's there, but it takes a while for reality or the results to catch up to it. And that's the really difficult part, right? That's the grind.
Well, no, so our business is really young in terms of staffing, which I think is good and bad. It's not intentional. I'm in my low to mid 30s. I, until a few months ago, was the oldest person in the business. That meant that I was referred to as middle-aged regularly by design team, which wasn't okay. But equally, I think it allows some doubt to creep in because you start to go, I used to hate it when people told me you're not experienced enough to have this job, or you don't have enough experience, or you don't have the knowledge, so you can't do it. And I'd be like, well, I'll prove you wrong. But now I'm in the shoes when the only person saying that is myself to myself. And I think sometimes it's really easy to go, I don't know how to fix this because I've not had to do it before. I think the other bit we've learned is, everyone makes mistakes. Sometimes I will make the wrong choice. But if that problem exists, and it exists for a lot of people, it means that all those experienced people out there haven't solved it yet. So I don't need to be one of those experienced ones because they don't know the solution either. I think they're just better at everyone believing they do.
The secret is everyone has imposter syndrome.
Exactly.
I'm a little bit curious. So you mentioned before there was that sort of vicious cycle of back and forth from like operations to sales and back and forth from that. And I know a lot of other leaders suffer from that. How was it that you got out of that cycle?
I think lots of founders have an ego, and I definitely have an ego. I want to be the biggest and the best. I want Wild to dominate the world of brand activation around the world. But I've always been really happy to accept that I am not the expert at everything. My job as leading this business is to bring in all the experts around me and get them together in a room and make decisions. So the backwards and forwards in terms of leadership has never really existed because I've always tried to bring the rest of the team close. I'm sure any of them, if they end up watching this or listening to this, will laugh when I say that, because they've all sat there in a room before where we've had a team huddle with everyone from the theoretically lowest rung of our reporting ladder up to myself. And I've just sat there and gone, so what do you guys want to do next year? What would be cool for us to do? And then mapped it out. Because I think when you're a massive company, you obviously can't let everyone decide where you're going to go because there's too many opinions, but we're still small enough that everyone can input. And the more opinions you take, the more likely you are to find the average of the best solution. So we regularly doubted ourselves. The more times we spoke to each other, we realized an idea that I might have or an idea that one of our designers might have where they were thinking it was rubbish. Everyone else thought it was really cool. But you needed to put that out into the world and listen to those you could trust. And as soon as they started feeding back, actually, you know what, that's good. And equally, sometimes, John, what are you talking about? Leave that idea at home. We don't want to hear about that again. But I think as long as you're listening, and yeah, we created a great close-knit group. Like I said, at the beginning of COVID, we started expanding out. We brought in someone who was really knowledgeable, and that helped us on that journey. And I think since then, we've hired with skill set, but also with human beings in mind. We've been hiring for one role. We couldn't decide between two people because of their personality. So we just hired both because we knew those personalities fitted well enough. We would be able to succeed with them. So yeah, it's just good people around you and backing them just as much as hopefully they back you.
You mentioned there that you've managed to start hiring people to take over some of those tasks then. Is it that you now spend a lot more time on the operations side of things, or you spend more time on the sales side of things?
Just a mixture. So I would say I've fallen into the same trap. I think the amount of times I've spoken to founders, they've all said the same thing, where the first roles you end up filling are the ones that you enjoy the most, because they're the ones that everyone else enjoys doing as well. So I'm a bit spread. I still dabble in the operations. I've got a lot better. The ops director would be very pleased to hear me say it, stepping away and going, you know what, I don't know as much about this anymore. But again, we're a small business, right? So when it gets tough, everyone mucks in. I think sales is where I'm meant to be, but I naturally hate it. So I know I'm sat here, the irony of being sat here talking about me/the business. Doesn't sound like what I'm going to say, but I'm naturally really introverted. I feel like I've got a split personality. So I can switch on work, John, and he can go out there and pitch, but he gets really tired pitching. And I'm far happier at home, tucked away with my laptop, with the lights down and no one talking to me. That is an easier place for me to be. So I am involved in sales, but I'm now being airdropped in later when I can actually give some input on creative direction or really strategy around it. We have recently hired the final person in the design team. That we had one section of design that only I could do within the business still, and we've recently hired and filled that. So now I should be stepping away from there. I think deep down inside, I'll really struggle to leave the creative bit behind. So I am more separate, but I think if you love it, you can't let go. So, and that's part of the problem. So now what we've built is a business that if I went on holiday, so I got married earlier this year. It really came to a head though. I had 3 weeks I was not going to be in this business. And it was a moment of, I wanted to go into my marriage the right way. So I wasn't willing to be working, which is the first time probably since 2016 where I've ever had that mindset of work can wait. But equally, 3 weeks is a long time to not be connected. And I mean, even down to the little stuff like having to sign off money to be sent because of values. And sometimes we deal with quite big values. I hadn't had to worry about the fact that I would be away for too long, that could cause an operational headache. And so weirdly, the wedding might have helped pull it away a bit. We've sort of shifted the business to now I get to dabble in everything, but I don't have to dabble in everything. It's sort of where we're at until eventually they start shouting at me, and then I'm sure I'll back away a bit more.
A lot of the founders that I've spoken to struggle with stepping out of sales, usually because one of two things. They've built their company doing it themselves, so they don't want to delegate it to someone else. Or the other one is they've tried to, and it hasn't gone well. So they felt like they had to step back in, which kind of takes them a step backwards again. It sounds like so you're reaching the point where you want to move out of it now.
So sales-wise, we have done that. When I said we grew during COVID, we went into COVID with me and one other member of staff, and we came out with 9 members of staff by the end of the third lockdown, 12 within a few weeks after that, of which half of those were sales, if I'm honest. For us, it really didn't work. I think it was a combination. They had a tough time because of the time. Equally, I think we hadn't necessarily got our message right. So what I have come to realize with salespeople, I was talking about this with my team actually earlier today about how do we fill the sales roles. The real challenge you have, I think, and I see why founders get trapped in it, is summarizing your business succinctly enough that someone's going to buy it, but also that someone can pitch it that isn't you. Like, I could talk all day long about what I do, but that's because it's the business that I founded, and it's what I've done for now 8 years of the business, and then was connected to what I did before that. I think the challenge stepping away from a sales side is you can only get so far. Someone hears a soundbite of what you've said, and through no fault of their own, for a salesperson, they repeat the soundbite, but without the context. If you founded it and it's your baby, it's really hard to hear that person bastardize what you're saying. I think is the other problem. You're a bit like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but no, I don't like that. That's not what I want. So I think, as I say, I'm trying to step away from sales because I naturally hate it. It is difficult. I've come to accept that instead my role in the sales cycle will be to bring the knowledge and expertise, but not to have to open the door, because that's where I'm really weak. I don't have the personal confidence to take that person saying, I'm not interested right now, and then phone them again in X amount of time. I'll be like, they're not interested now, I'm not going to bug them, it's fine. But I think for any business, it's really hard to go much beyond that. Until we've got loads of staff and loads of experts, it's going to be difficult.
I think the dirty secret there is every company struggles with it to some extent. So even to the point where you might have the same brand promise and the same message, and even the same like messaging architecture, you know that this kind of person you speak this way and you say this specific language to. But at the same time, that person is going to have different needs at, say, the top of the funnel where they don't realize they have a problem, all the way down to sales where they're actually talking about the problem, the solution, that kind of thing. So while you might have the same message, it does actually get changed between marketing and sales and an actual client. Yeah.
It's the nuance, right? So different industries have different challenges. My background was print, large format print in particular. That's how I cut my teeth and saw the potential out there to create wild. But large format print, I'm selling a product. I am selling, you want this sticker on a window? I can do that sticker for you on a window. And I think in the creative industry in particular, the big challenge we've got is anyone can sell you a dream, and that dream can be as big and mental as you like, and it can blow you away. The problem is you've got to believe that they can deliver it, and you've got to understand the nuances around, I'm not selling you a specific product. I'm telling you I can help your brand connect with its audience, but you're going to say to me, prove it. How much money am I going to make? I'm not going to be able to tell you. Fundamentally, if I give you a number, I am just pulling it out of my backside. I just know it's the right thing for you to do. And our team is full of experts who know how to create those moments that will spread on social media or will just make someone smile when they walk past your brand. But that's not a product. So selling it is so difficult because I can't summarize that. Weirdly, we had a sales company pitch to us yesterday, and it made me laugh because I listened to them saying, well, we could sell your brand. And I was like, I can't wait to hear how, because I can't wait to hear how you summarize what we're doing, other than making people feel special. But like, you could call us the Disney of creative, but it wouldn't be true. Sales is such a tough one. I think that's the other reason why we'll just work with the network we've got, which is fine until something happens to one of those people.
A lot of businesses still focus primarily on profit. How do you go about positioning sustainability as a value proposition for those kind of companies?
So back when I said we were changing our model and we were pushed to by British Fashion Council, we came up with something which we called the Greener Standard Promise. So that was launched in 2017, and that was because we knew we could do it. We would do the same style of product, greener, not necessarily perfect, but greener than your traditional choice. So when people do lots of print and branding, it's often like Foamex is a good example, or more commonly actually vinyl. And it was always PVC based, couldn't be recycled, terrible for the planet. But everyone did it. And there was a PVC-free version that could be recycled that had existed, turns out, for years, but no one was using. So we just changed it. So people would come to us and go, right, we want to take over this space. We want to do that thing. And even as we did the walk rounds on that site visit, they were like, yep, okay, I want vinyls here. And we're like, yep, that's fine. That's fine. But by the time they got their quote, it'd be, okay, here's your quote, the same price as it would have been for what you've asked for, but this is the sustainable version of it. And you can ask me to change it back to the traditional, but that just makes you a bad human being. Fundamentally, you're just asking for something to be worse with no benefit. So what do you want to do? And they would inadvertently move along. And so we sort of did that for a fair few years. Now I don't think it's as difficult. Now no one wants to pay for it, but now I think it is easier for them to not pay for it. It has become more expected that you will be taking a greener approach. And to be honest, for a while, that's probably hit our bottom line a bit more. It's through no fault of the clients, more just we get distracted and carried away with it. As a business, our biggest flaw is we are not profit focused enough. We get too carried away with how do we create a great idea, or how do we make this greener, or how do we have some positive impact. Oh yeah, we forgot to mention that to the client, but it's so good we've got to do that anyway. Let's just do it. And we'll just take the hit for it. And it is not uncommon. So I think some of the ways we've got around it are not necessarily healthy. I wouldn't recommend everyone doing that. But I think it's being so confident in your proposition that you know where you can and where you can't. And if you can be that confident, that client will follow you. The clients just want to trust that you know better than they do. So as long as you can turn around to them and go, are you a bad person or are you not? Because this will look great. They'll always choose being the good person. And they'll smile just like you did when you say that statement, because they'll know you are being humorous, sort of. There's a bit of you that's there going, well, I mean it though. Like, do you want to burn the planet for the sake of it? Probably not.
Well, I think it's also like the absolute honesty about it as well.
Yeah. but that was the thing, right? And when we started doing it, I remember some of my colleagues would hear me say it and be like, oh, we don't like this, John. What are you doing? And then they would see the client's reaction and be like, oh no, okay, this is fun. Because I think we all know it. Unless you are a famous American politician, you probably believe in climate change, right? Fundamentally right now, you are at a point where everyone knows it. Everyone knows they have to do something about it. Most people want to, they just don't know how. So we just need to make sure that they don't have to think about how. And then it's easy.
The vinyl story is quite funny. I was speaking to Lewis Jameson at Music Declares Emergency, and he was telling me basically the same story about the records that are not PVC. None of the companies wanted to use it for a very long time just because it was different and they didn't want to take the risk. And it's ultra commercial music. It's very weird coincidence, that one. So you're one of the first companies that became a B Corp, and obviously partners.
We're in the first 600 B Corps. So we're the first brand activation agency in the UK. We're an early adopter of general agency. They and us couldn't tell you how many agencies they had before us, because we have tried to check that one. But yeah, we're in the first 600 full stop for the UK. I think there are now something like 4,000.
Around that, I think I saw. So obviously being one of the first to certify for that and then working with partners like Ecology, what I'm really interested in is how those partnerships and certifications have impacted your business.
If I'm totally honest, they haven't influenced it. B Corp's a really interesting conversation at the minute right now. It's very Marmite as an accreditation. I think my perspective on B Corp is we're really proud to have got it. Anyone who goes through that process, the amount of times I've seen people say, look at the organizations they've got through, try and complete that process and you'll realize it's not as easy as you are making it out to be. Nonetheless, there are some bad eggs in there and that's not ideal. But if you're certifying for everyone else, that's the problem. So for us, B Corp gave us a certificate that meant, okay, guys, when you're saying, are you sustainable, we can show you something where someone else has said we are better for the planet than rather than us just telling you we are. So great, that gives us a bit of reputational support. But the reality was, it gave us a structure by which we could judge ourselves. So the process of going through it, lots of people, it takes over a year for their first certification. We were lucky. I think we, probably because there were less people applying as well at the time, we made it through in, I think it was about 6 or 7 months. And some of that you weren't doing anything, but other times you were going through and going, right, they're checking your process. This time around, when we recertified properly, and every 3 years, then you have to do like a proper, they dig deeper into you again. They checked, like they before we'd started, they had already looked through our website and our socials and gone, you guys are talking about this, why are you working with that client? Like, what are you going to do about it? And we were working with brands in certain industries where actually they were right to call us out on it. We weren't doing anything fundamentally wrong. Like one of my favorite projects we've worked on is Johnny Walker's experience up in Scotland. Highly recommend it. Great experience in Edinburgh. But when we worked on that, none of us were thinking we're working with an alcohol brand and alcohol is damaging to human beings. But B Corp called us out on it when, well, why were you working with an alcohol brand? What were you doing? And in that scenario, we turn around like, okay, well, actually, we weren't selling booze. We were selling the history of a part of Scotland. And I think that's an important history to be told. It has a lot of heritage and you can't just forget about that existence. But that structure from B Corp to go, right, why, has allowed us to judge ourselves on other things. And there was another client that came up in that and we're like, okay, you're right. And we have since dropped that client because we've looked through and it's wrong for us to work with you. Really sorry. Here's who we recommend, but we can't do it. And equally in terms of structure, I think if you're a small business, if you're any business, but particularly a small one, you just don't know where to start. Especially if you're changing all those hats, you don't have time to do the research to find where. So someone coming along and going, here's what you need to do to get our certification, here's what you need to show us, and here's what you need to be working on, gives you that focus to go, right, I've got a starting point. And if you stop there, that's where it gives companies that have B Corp status a bad name. It's like for us, that gave us the structure, but it didn't mean that was the end. We've got the certificate, it's shown us how to do it. So how do we improve beyond that? But thank you for the basis. And I think sometimes the companies that get a bad rep are the ones who've gone, right, I've got the certificate, so I don't need to do this anymore. Thanks. And Ecology, to be honest, that's just a good way for us to be able to monitor to a degree what we're doing. And it's the methodology by which we can counteract some of our impact. So we use it for offsetting because we can't be carbon neutral from day dot. So how do we balance out the damage that we have been doing? So it is one of the cogs within the wheels that we use to try and be societally aware.
John, my final question for you. If you had one piece of advice for a company in sustainability, what would it be?
My piece of advice would be just do whatever you want to do in it. It doesn't matter how crazy the idea is, just push it. If you believe in it, it is a good thing. And as long as you follow through on that belief, if your impact's tiny, so be it. At least you've done something So yeah, it's just try. Simple as that. No one's going to get it perfect. So yeah, just try.
Appreciate your time today, John. How can people get in touch with you in Wild?
Me personally, they can get me on LinkedIn. Equally, they can reach out to the company as a whole. So hello@wild-vc.com. But I'm more than happy to chat online or meet up for a coffee or whatever else. Yeah, I'll probably talk a bit too much.
Thank you very much for your time today, John.
Have a good one. Thank you.